The first scream didn't come from the street. It came from inside, muffled behind thick glass, lost beneath the thrum of rain, yet sharp enough to slice through the night. A man's voice, angry. Another, older, cracking. Then the sound of something heavy hitting wet concrete. No one turned to look. The city kept moving, umbrellas low, collars high, eyes forward. The kind of moment that's over before anyone dares to admit they saw it. But Raya Morgan saw. She always did. She stopped mid-stride on the corner of Harrow Street where the puddles mirrored neon signs like spilled gold. Her fingers tightened around a frayed shoulder strap, the weight of an old canvas bag pulling her backwards. Her breath, faint in the cold, curled like smoke in the dim air. She was 27, tired, not in the way sleep fixes, but in the way life wears you thin. Her hoodie was 2 sizes too big, gray from 100 washes, and the faded blue apron, tucked into her back pocket, told you everything. She was a cook, or had been once. Her hair, jet black, twisted up in a loose bun, had frizzed in the rain. Her sneakers were soaked. Her jeans clung to her legs like a second skin. But none of it mattered, because just ahead, someone had fallen, and no one was stopping. 2 blocks back sat the Elm Cafe, her mother's old diner. A sagging, rust-bitten thing sandwiched between a liquor store and a dry cleaner with papered windows. Once it had buzzed with laughter and sizzling oil, filled with the smell of cinnamon and fried okra. Now it was dying, quietly, like an old radio fading out. It wasn't her job anymore. Not really, but it was all she had left. Raya had dropped, out of culinary school after her mom died. Cancer, fast and merciless. Her aunt had tried to keep the place running, but after a fall broke her hip and the medical bills piled up, it had fallen to Raya. For 2 years, she kept the lights on. Barely. Now the debt was more than the diner could serve out of it. And tomorrow, she was supposed to lock the doors for good. A final, silent funeral no one would attend. But tonight, the scream. She turned. Through the blur of rain and the glossy glare of a 5-star steakhouse window, she saw it happen. A man in a white shirt, a waiter, shoved an old man hard. The kind of shove meant to humiliate, not hurt. But when you're that fragile, it does both. The old man slipped on the stone steps and collapsed like a tree that had been standing too long. His cane flew from his fingers. His head barely missed the edge of the curb. His body shook, not from pain or fear, but from something deeper. Something wrong. Raya's breath caught. She knew those shakes. Her aunt had them sometimes. The silent tremors that came before her medicine kicked in. This man wasn't just old. He was sick. The waiter turned, waved him off like trash. "You're scaring the customers," he barked, then vanished back, inside where the warm lights couldn't be touched. Raya didn't think. She dropped her bag, dashed across the street, knees soaking through as she knelt beside the man. The rain clung to her eyelashes. Her hands moved gently, instinctively, the way her mother once taught her to handle fragile dishes. "Sir, are you okay? Can you hear me?" she whispered. The old man opened his eyes. They were cloudy, like smoke trapped in blue glass. He winced as he tried to sit up, hands jerking against the ground. His jaw trembled. His breath came in short gasps. The side of his face was smeared with rain and shame. She didn't wait. "I'm Raya. Let me help you," she said softly. "My place isn't far. We'll get you dry. We'll get you fed." He didn't answer, but he didn't resist either. That was enough. She retrieved his cane, helped him up slowly, every movement measured. His jacket was soaked through, threads coming loose around the cuffs. His body felt like matchsticks in her arms. They walked together, slowly, one uneven step at a time. Cars hissed by without slowing. People stared, then looked away, but Raya held him steady. The diner door squeaked when they arrived. The bell overhead chimed like an old friend. The diner's warmth felt like a blessing. or maybe like a memory that hadn't yet faded. Raya eased the old man into the booth in the far back, the one closest to the rusted radiator. The cracked leather seat gave a soft sigh beneath him, still warm from the few customers who had wandered in earlier. She guided his cane gently against the edge of the bench, angling it just right so it wouldn't fall. The man's fingers fumbled over the fabric of his soaked jacket, trying to smooth it, but they didn't listen to him. They curled and twitched like startled birds caught in a storm. He stared down, embarrassed. Raya watched, her chest tightening with something sharp and hot, a mix of fury and helplessness. Not at him, at the world that had made him invisible. She steadied herself by placing a hand flat on the table, then forced a soft smile. "You just rest, all right? I'm going to make you something good, hot, comforting, no bill, no catch." The old man raised his head. Under the cold flicker of the diner lights, his eyes shone, cloudy but grateful. His voice came out raspy, fragile, but soaked in sincerity. "You're kind, miss," he murmured. "Most folks don't even stop to look." Raya gave a small nod, her lips tight, and disappeared through the swinging door into the kitchen. The kitchen was tiny, held together by chipped tile and stubborn hope. The walls were stained with steam, and the overhead light buzzed like a lazy wasp. But this was her place, her mother's place, a room that smelled of garlic, flour, and yesterday's prayers. The stove coughed as she turned the knob. The heat crackled to life. From beneath the last drawer, Raya pulled out what little she had left. A bunch of mustard greens, dark and curling, thick slabs of smoked turkey thigh, a small bundle of orange yams softening in a crate, and the half-loaf of cornbread she had baked the night before, still wrapped in a dish towel, still golden like the memory of sunlight. She worked without thinking. Her hands moved on memory, peeling, slicing, stirring. The old rhythm returned like breath. The greens hit the skillet with a hiss. The turkey sizzled as it browned. The scent rose fast, thick with salt and spice, weaving through the air like an old hymn. It curled through the doorway, past cracked tiles and wobbly chairs, reaching out to the man waiting quietly. Raya peeked through the small service window. He hadn't moved much, sat stiff, watching the walls like he expected to be told he didn't belong, that someone would come, shove him out again, remind him he was just a mistake taking up space. But she wasn't going to let that happen. Not here. 10 minutes later, the plate was ready, steam rising like incense. The greens shimmered with melted butter, the turkey tender enough to fall apart beneath a spoon. The yams were sweet, seasoned with cinnamon and love. The cornbread still soft enough to absorb honey like it was meant to be kissed by sweetness. She added a tall glass of sweet lemon tea, strong and so sugary it made your teeth itch. The way her mother used to make it. She carried the plate out herself, sliding it gently in front of the man. Then she lowered herself into the booth across from him, sighing as she tucked her legs beneath the table. Her bones ached, but something quiet and warm bloomed in her chest, something like peace. "I hope you're hungry," she said with a small smile. The man stared at the food like it was a royal feast. His hands trembled more now, struggling to pick up the fork. But Raya didn't help. She didn't rush. She just let him be, because dignity meant letting someone try. He took his first bite, slowly, chewing, pausing, closing his eyes. When he opened them again, they shimmered, his lips pressed together in a quiet kind of thanks. For a while, they just ate. No words. Just the clink of cutlery, the low hum of the old jukebox, and the sigh of the rain outside. Then he spoke, his voice cracking between bites. "My name's Henry Lawson," he said. "Used to work over at the print press down on 14th Street. Before my hands betrayed me." Raya's spoon paused halfway to her mouth. "I've been out here for years," Henry continued. "City keeps moving, fast, cold. I tried to keep up, but people don't want to look at someone like me anymore, especially not when I shake." His fork rattled slightly against the plate. He gripped it tighter. "Even when I try to pay, they flinch." Raya listened, fully. Her eyes on him, her heart split between sorrow and silent rage at a world that could be so careless. He asked her name. She told him. He asked about the diner. And suddenly, the words poured out. The things she hadn't said aloud in weeks, maybe months, about how her parents died when she was 8, a car crash just outside Millen Creek, about how her aunt took her and her little sister in, about how this diner had been her mother's dream, to feed people with empty pockets and full hearts. She told him about her aunt's illness, the hospital stays that lasted too long, the pills that cost too much, the debts that swallowed every paycheck whole, and how tomorrow she would have to lock the door for good. Henry didn't speak, not for a time. He just nodded, slow and solemn, his hands folded neatly on his lap, like he didn't trust them not to shake again. He watched her like she was the only light left in a room full of shadows. When the plates were clean, Raya stood, her back stiff, eyes damp. She helped Henry to his feet, steadying him as he leaned on the cane. The bell above the door chimed again as they stepped outside. The rain had softened into a gentle mist. The street lamps glowed gold, their reflections stretching like silk across the wet pavement. The city still moved, quiet, busy, uncaring. But for a moment the world had paused, just enough for kindness to slip through. Raya flagged an old yellow cab, pressed a few wrinkled bills into the driver's hand, and gave Henry's address. He turned before climbing in, his hands shaking still, but now holding hers with something steadier. Maybe gratitude, maybe hope, maybe something stronger. "I'll come back," he said, a fierce gleam in his tired eyes. "Tomorrow. Same time." Raya smiled, big, real, even as her throat ached and the headlights carried him away into the fog. She stood on the sidewalk alone, the cracked concrete beneath her sneakers, her diner flickering behind her like an old heartbeat still refusing to stop, and for the first time in a long while, she let herself believe. Maybe this wasn't the end. The sky hung heavy over the rooftops like a damp wool blanket, sagging low with the weight of unfinished tears. Light crept in reluctantly, spilling across the slick asphalt of Maple Row, where last night's rain still clung to gutters and windows, glinting like glass under the pale hush of dawn. Inside a second-floor walk-up with paper-thin walls, Raya. Morgan sat on the edge of her bed, lacing up her sneakers slowly, like every loop of the shoelace was buying her a few more seconds with the past. She hadn't slept. Not really. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Henry's trembling hands, his bruised dignity, and that broken smile when she fed him something hot and good. Today was supposed to be goodbye. And yet, she couldn't shake the sense that something was shifting beneath the surface, something invisible but powerful. Like the diner itself was holding its breath. She pulled on her old jeans, the ones with flour stains she could never wash out, and shrugged into her soft gray hoodie. The hem was fraying, but it still smelled. Like home. Butter, soap, and the faintest trace of cinnamon. Her fingers brushed the picture frame by the nightstand, a younger version of her mom grinning in the diner's kitchen, holding a wooden spoon like it was a royal scepter. "This one's for you," Raya whispered. The bell above the Elm Cafe door let out its signature tired jingle as she stepped inside. The warmth hit her first, faint, weak from the old heater fighting the chill, but it wrapped around her like an old friend trying its best. She stood at the threshold, eyes drinking in every detail like it might be the last time. The scuffed floor tiles that refused to shine no matter how hard she scrubbed. The booths sagging just a little in the middle. the smell of coffee grounds, and fryer oil that had soaked into the very bones of the place. And the weak winter sun trying to spill through the windows, but not quite making it past the grease-streaked glass. She let the keys dangle from her fingers, not quite ready to start, not quite ready to end. Today was the last day. That's what the eviction notice taped under the register said, what the numbers said, what the silence of unpaid bills whispered every night. But it wouldn't end in silence. Raya tied her apron tight, rolled up her sleeves, and marched into the kitchen with purpose. She didn't have much left, but she had enough. Enough to do what her mother would have done. Feed people. She rummaged through the nearly empty pantry and refrigerator. The potatoes were soft, the onions sprouting, the sausage slightly dry. But in her hands, they became magic. She made a hearty vegetable stew, ladled into deep bowls that steamed like morning breath. She cooked up trays of cornbread, crisp on the edges, golden in the middle, scrambled eggs rich with butter, piled next to grilled sausage links and toasted ends of bread. As the scent drifted out through the cracked door, it carried a promise that for one more morning, this place would still be a home. And they came. One by one, drawn by the smell and the warmth of familiarity. The regulars from the bus depot, Ms. Judy, the elderly woman who muttered to herself and always sat near the jukebox, like it spoke just to her. The Martinez boys, teenagers with hoodies too thin for the cold and eyes too old for their age. They filled the booths and corners, bowls cradled in grateful hands, laughter rising like steam. Raya served them with real smiles. She set plates down gently as if the food might break. She laughed when old Mr. Dean from the pawn shop grumbled that the cornbread was too good to be free. She saw one of the Martinez boys sneak a muffin into his coat. She looked away, pretended not to notice. Today wasn't about loss. It was about giving. Then the bell rang, a soft chime, nothing special. But Raya knew, the moment it echoed, that the air had changed. Henry stood in the doorway. His shoulders looked a little straighter today. His coat buttoned neatly, his steps still slow, still trembling, but steadier somehow, as if last night had stitched something inside him back together. And beside him was a man Raya had never seen before. Tall, impeccably dressed in a coat dark as midnight, shoes polished to a mirror shine, his hair combed so neatly it looked painted on. His face was the kind that made people turn twice, not just for beauty, but for presence, power. He didn't walk in. He arrived. His eyes swept the diner like they were measuring it, and everyone in it. Raya froze. The cloth in her hand slipped to the floor. Henry shuffled toward her, a smile blooming across his face like sunlight cracking through gray sky. "Told you I'd come back," he said, voice fragile but full of pride. "And I brought company." The man behind him hesitated, then stepped forward and offered his hand. "I'm Simon," he said, "Henry's son." The handshake was brief, but Raya felt it like thunder. Her calloused hand, scarred from years of dish soap and hot pans, met his, smooth, firm, business soft. Their eyes locked for a second, longer than needed. "It's nice to meet you," she said, steady as she could, though her chest felt like it was thudding too loud. Simon looked around. His mouth tightened as he took in the peeling paint, the wobbling stools, the chipped mugs stacked behind the counter. He didn't say a word, but she felt it. The calculation, the conflict. He didn't belong here. Not really. Not yet. Henry didn't seem to care. He was already leading Simon to the same booth he'd sat in last. Night. "She found me," Henry was saying as they walked. "Didn't look at me like I was broken. Didn't turn away." Raya watched from behind the counter. Her hands busied themselves with the coffee pot, but her ears were locked on every word. When Simon returned minutes later, steam curling up between them, he spoke low. "My father doesn't ask for much," he said, his voice clipped but honest. "When he does, I listen." Raya waited. He looked around again. "This place, it's not much, but it's something." Her spine straightened. "It's everything," she said quietly. Simon nodded once, barely. "I didn't come here to insult what you've built," he continued. "I came to understand it." She said nothing, just watched him. "My father wants this place to live. He says it healed something in him. And I think he might be right." He reached into his coat, pulled out a small leather folder. She didn't open it, not yet. "What is it?" she asked. Raya didn't speak right away. She stood behind the counter, her hands wrapped in a damp towel, fingers knotted tight beneath the fabric. The quiet between her and Simon stretched, long and taut, like a rope pulled between two cliffs. He hadn't come in loud. He hadn't come in promising miracles. He'd just watched her, the diner, the way the regulars smiled when she passed, how they sat a little straighter, just because she brought them something warm. He'd seen all that, and then said only this. "My father wanted me to thank you." His voice was soft now, nearly shy. "I was going to write a check," he admitted, lips twitching like the words tasted odd. "Something generous, something that made things right?" Raya arched an eyebrow, heart guarded, hands still busy with the towel. He hesitated, looked over his shoulder again, to where Henry sat smiling, sipping coffee from a chipped blue mug like it was the finest china. "But now," Simon said, turning back, voice lowered to something nearly intimate, "I think we can do better than that." Raya's breath caught. Her instincts kicked in fast, defense mechanisms honed by a lifetime of disappointment. Men like him didn't show up in diners like this unless they wanted something. And they certainly didn't talk about partnerships, unless a profit was in sight. She squinted, wary. "What does that mean?" He didn't flinch. "I want to help you keep this place." He said it plainly. No dramatic pause, no scripted tone. Not just with money, with a plan, a real chance, a new beginning. The words hung in the air, bold and impossible. Raya blinked. Her mouth opened, then closed. She didn't know what to say. She didn't know if it was real. But Henry's eyes glistened from across the diner. That same pride in his expression from the night she carried him through the rain. Outside, for the first time in days, the clouds began to break, light pouring in slow and golden, casting long beams across the linoleum floor. It looked like a sunrise sneaking in sideways. The next 6 weeks passed like a fever dream. The diner shut its doors, temporarily this time, but it didn't go quiet. Instead, it pulsed with new life. Hammers echoed, drills buzzed, and the air smelled like sawdust and fresh paint instead of grease and tiredness. Ladders leaned against walls, blueprints unrolled like treasure maps across old booths. The sounds of nails being driven into wood were like heartbeat rhythms echoing through the bones of the place. Raya didn't sleep much, but it wasn't from stress. It was something else, restless energy. A spark she hadn't felt in years, not since she was 10, standing beside her mama in the pre-dawn hours, rolling biscuit dough in a kitchen lit by a single humming bulb. She was there every day, paint in her curls, dust on her hoodie, her jeans fraying further at the knees. She worked alongside contractors and designers like she belonged in every step of the rebuild. Because she did. This wasn't someone else's project. This was her life, rewritten. Simon didn't hover, but he didn't disappear either. He came by often, sometimes in tailored jackets, other times in flannel and jeans, sleeves rolled, clipboard in hand. His usual aura of quiet control was still there, but something had softened. He asked questions. He listened. He let Raya lead. He watched her patch holes in the walls like she was bandaging wounds that had been ignored too long. And every afternoon, like clockwork, Henry would shuffle up to the front, his cane tapping a steady rhythm. He never missed a day. He greeted workers like family, told stories that stretched too long but somehow never bored. He smiled like he could feel history being planted under his feet. Then the morning came, the grand reopening. Raya stood in the center of her reborn diner, barely, breathing. The light outside was golden, and the new windows, spotless and wide, drank in every ounce of it. The walls had been repainted a warm, earthy yellow. The checkerboard tiles remained cleaned and shining. The booths, reupholstered, still glowed in that deep red her mama once said felt like home. The counter gleamed, the coffee machines hummed, and behind the register, just above the till, hung a single framed photo. Her mother, in her apron, wooden spoon raised high, mid-laugh. Joy frozen forever. Raya wore a new apron, crisp and white. But underneath it, her old hoodie still hugged her like armor. Her hands trembled as she turned the lock and flipped the sign to open. They came. Old neighbors, curious visitors who'd heard whispers, kids with empty bellies and big eyes, women who remembered her mama and wanted to see what the girl had done with the place. The space filled quickly. The air buzzed with voices, laughter, clinking dishes. Raya's place, they called it now. The name etched proudly in the new sign above the door. Over 200 meals were served that day. No one was turned away. Raya didn't stop moving, ladling soup, refilling mugs, hugging regulars. Her legs ached, her back cried out, but none of it mattered, because she was smiling, really smiling. And somewhere off to the side he was watching. Simon, leaning casually near the window, saying nothing, just letting the scene unfold. And beside him, Henry, cap tilted back, joy bursting from every wrinkle. Late in the afternoon, when the crowd had thinned and the sun hung low like melted amber, Simon pulled Raya aside. They stepped onto the sidewalk. He handed her a folder, thick, heavy, bound in dark leather. It felt official. She opened it, fingers trembling. Inside were papers, incorporation documents, bank statements, a trust agreement. She blinked. "What is this?" Simon's voice was warm. "It's a foundation, for the diner." He smiled, sincere. "The Raya's Place Foundation. You'll run it." Raya stared, stunned. "Every plate served contributes to a fund for families in crisis, single moms, sick elders, kids who need lunch but don't have a lunchbox. It's funded for the first year. After that, the more this place thrives, the more people it feeds outside these walls." She looked up, her eyes burning. "You trust me to run this?" Simon didn't hesitate. "I've never trusted anyone more." Henry stepped beside her, his hand shaking as he laid it gently on her shoulder. "You fed me like I was yours," he said softly, voice cracking. "Now the world gets to taste what family really means." Raya bit her lip hard, but the tears still came. She turned toward the diner, now glowing from within. Windows lit, sign bright, laughter spilling out like music. She could almost see her mama walking through the space, apron flapping, that warm breeze of love rising like heat from the oven. This wasn't an end, not even a beginning. This was a promise. That kindness, real kindness, doesn't just pass through. It stays. It roots. It grows into something bigger than you ever dreamed. She smiled. The bell above the door chimed as she stepped back inside and got to work. True kindness doesn't need a spotlight. It begins with one quiet choice to care. What you give with love, no matter how small, can ripple into something far bigger than you imagined. A meal, a moment, a second chance. They're how we rebuild each other, and sometimes ourselves. If this story touched your heart, give it a like and share it with someone who believes in the power of compassion. Subscribe for more soulful stories like this, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss a reminder that even in the hardest moments, kindness still matters.